Back on the RJ Young Show, Mayberry on the ones and twos, joined by Tulsa World Sports columnist Bill Haston. And on the line is the greatest pro wrestling announcer of all time, 1969 All-State Westville High School center, Mr. Jim Ross. Mr. Ross, thank you so much, sir. How you doing?
I'm good, buddy. My dad was Mr. Ross, RJ. I'm JR.
Okay, we'll go with that, JR. I got to tell you, I enjoyed Under the Black Hat as much as I enjoyed Slobberknocker. Thank you for telling these stories. But one of the things that I think interests me the most, being from here, being from this state, is how you identified Jake Hager as being a man that was capable of performing in the ring, because it's a little bit different, I like to think, than just going out there and beating people.
Yeah, well, Jake Hager's a great athlete, you know. But I told him this all the time. You'll always be the second toughest guy ever from Perry, Oklahoma. That distinction goes to Danny Hodge. Still to this very day at 88, he's still the baddest man in town. So, but Jake's done a great job for us in AEW. We're on TV tonight at 7 o'clock on TNT. So he's a big part of what we're doing, and we're really glad to have a former Sooner on our team.
Do you still have a role in identifying talent for AEW, or is that something you've given up?
Oh no, I haven't given it up. It's not an official title. I think my title there is a senior advisor. So if I see guys that are available or that may become available, that I think can help us. And as far as the recruiting process is concerned, I still suggest guys, but it's not my full-time gig anymore like it was during the WWE 26 years I was there.
Jim, Bill Haston, the Black Hat book, sensational. Last time I saw you was at the Slobberknocker signing event here in town. Well, I should give you an opportunity to promote it if you got it, to promote. Do you have any signing events coming up in Oklahoma, in Tulsa? What's going on with that?
Well, we're not going to – Bill will have signings when the virus gives us the opportunity to get in a group of people. Until then, folks, if they care to check it out, and it's available at jrsbbq.com,
right?
jrsbbq.com, and Amazon and Barnes and Noble have it, and if they don't, they'll get it. It's a Simon & Schuster product, so we get great exposure there. But it's still selling very well. At my website, that we have a little warehouse here in Norman. I personalize the autographs. Makes great gifts, Father's Day stuff. We get your order, we'll ship it out in 48 hours or so. So it's been a labor of love, and it's really clicking, and I'm very proud. I say oftentimes it was my last official public hug to my late wife Jan, because she was such a big part of my success and such a big part. I was kind of like a coach in WWE. She was a perfect coach's wife. So it's a very diverse book, as you guys know, and it's true. It's all true, and I talk about things I've never discussed before, and along the way, this crazy journey I've been on. A long way from the Leroy McGurk days, I'll tell you.
That's right. Well, I just wondered about it because when I got the Black Hat book, I was in the same store where I saw you a couple of years ago for Slobberknocker, and wondered, that things are reopening. Maybe there's some event signings scheduled, but maybe that'll come later. But I wanted to ask.
They definitely will come later, Bill. We just got to get where we know that we're not putting anybody in harm's way,
right,
from this damn virus. So, but yeah, it'll happen.
Jim, I wanted to ask you, and this is even if it applies to maybe a mid-card lifer who was a really reliably solid mid-card. It doesn't matter to me if it's a headliner, a WrestleMania headliner, or a mid-card, but if you combine in-ring ability, microphone work, charisma, consistently great matches, who were the top 3 or 4 figures in Jim Ross's lifetime in the business?
Well, that's a good question. Stone Cold Steve Austin, who I signed, would be on that list. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, who I signed when he was broke. He had $7 to his name, which is the name of his production company. We had that came up at our first lunch together when I was recruiting him. So Austin and Rock would certainly be 2 guys that would be on there. The greatest all-around guy, over 10 years in service, consistency of matches, a diversity of opponents would be Ric Flair. So Flair, Austin, and Rock would be on that list, that short list of three that you asked about.
All right, and then I'm gonna step aside for a minute. But who would be a surprise fourth? You know what I mean? Just somebody that maybe isn't hailed as a headline type superstar guy, but was just massively appreciated by Jim Ross for great matches and consistency.
Oh goodness, there's a lot of guys could fall in that category because, golly, tough question. Well, I've always said that Flair was the best I ever saw. Shawn Michaels was the best in-ring guy following that. The total package, Austin and Rock. Shawn goes in that conversation, obviously. So many guys, when we signed Kurt Angle, I signed Kurt Angle after he won the 96 Olympics in the heavyweight freestyle division. I never saw Kurt Angle have a bad match in those days. He'd be on that list, too. I always had a propensity, and this is a Bill Watts philosophy that I learned starting in 1974 there in Tulsa, that, I like to recruit athletes. I'm not big on bodybuilders, not knocking all bodybuilders. If some are listening, don't get mad. But I like guys that come from a locker room environment, from a team environment. If that does include bodybuilders, then I apologize. But I do like the guys. You look at that roster that we put together. So many guys were from mainstream sports, and so that was Dr. Dusty Williams, one of my best friends of all time. He passed away of cancer way too early, but Doc was one of those locker room guys. We signed, and golly, so many others. But coming out of that environment just makes it easier to acclimate into a team effort. And I think that's why sports are so important. They do so much for our character and how we build our character and teach responsibility, unselfishness, and things of that nature. So, but it's just a hard question to answer on that fourth one. But Shawn Michaels is always going to be in my conversation. Bill Watts hired Shawn Michaels his first job. I called Shawn Michaels' first match. He and I have been friends for a long time. He went on a long 4-year sabbatical that I convinced him to come out of. Just a matter of recruiting. Coach Switzer tells me all the time, you recruit these guys for life. If you're ever at a Coach Switzer's house and you have a cocktail or two, his phone will never stop ringing. And a lot of times it's from guys that played for him that need something. And he's always there for them. And I tried to follow that mantra and always be there for my guys, even though many of them still work at WWE and I work at AEW. They still know that they can text me, call me, or whatever. I'll always be there for them, and that's how I'm going to continue to live my life.
Hey, JR, this is Spencer, RJ's producer, and we've been talking a lot of AEW lately on the show. And one thing that we've kind of noticed about it is kind of how it's more free form and a little bit less regimented and prepackaged, I think. And does that shifting the creative control back to the wrestlers, do you think that's one of the biggest reasons that the AEW has been so successful?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Spencer. We don't have any writers in our company. WWE, for example, has a plethora of writers. And it's always best if you get the creative from the people that are actually going to execute it, at least a portion of it, so they have some skin in the game. So, yeah, us not having any writers, the promos aren't scripted. The talents are encouraged to create their own content. Chris Jericho creates a lot of his own content with his videos. A young kid like Darby Allin does a lot of great work on his own. So we encourage all the talents. Hey, everybody's got a phone, man, and we can see on the news every day. Where would we be in our news cycle without people that got camera phones? So I'm a big fan of the talents of bringing something. Ernie Ladd told Junkyard Dog one time, said, "Don't come to work like a cabbage, all head and no rear end." We like guys that have rear end and that they bring something to the table.
Talking with JR, that is Jim Ross, to those of you that are looking up his book, Under the Black Hat, one of the voices of my childhood, and that's where I wanted to go. My mother asked me to ask you this question, JR, which is, what is your staying power? And I think you kind of get at that in the book, but what do you attribute your ability to just continue to do this job that the more I find out about it is just grueling?
Well, RJ, I think it's the way I was raised. You know, I grew up in Adair County in Westville, graduated in 1970, former Westville Yellow Jacket, by golly. And I just think the way I was raised, you know, I was the only child on a 160-acre farm. I always had responsibilities. And if I fulfilled my responsibilities and I was accountable, I did what I needed to do, then I got rewarded. And one of those rewards was on Saturday afternoon when I could have been out doing chores with my dad. If my grades were good and I was a good citizen and a good son and I fulfilled my obligations, I got rewarded in the form of, like, I could watch wrestling every Saturday afternoon with Leroy McGurk and Danny Williams and all those old guys. It was a big thing, and I was a real crazy ass kid. You know, I enjoyed watching wrestling and roller derby. Now, I'm a football guy through and through, but if I checked all the boxes and the old man made me accountable, then I got a little payback. I didn't get an allowance. I got room and board, but I didn't get an allowance. But I got to watch wrestling and roller derby, and of course, then Dad and I watched all the football we could consume.
I wanted to ask from the standpoint of your late wife, Jan, who you wrote about just passionately in the book, and thank you for making yourself that vulnerable to us. Can you talk about what it means to have that sort of person in your life to allow you to do this thing that you really love, but also eats up so much of your time with travel and really you were wearing two hats, so it seemed, at the WWE?
Well, I was very fortunate to meet Jan, and you know, I had a couple of failed marriages, which I'm not proud of. I'll take full responsibility for that because I was a workaholic, and for many, many years, unfortunately for me, I had the mindset that it was all about me and that my job was more important than anything else because after all, I'm providing for the family. And that can't be your excuse. Well, I'm the provider. You can't prioritize your work over your family. And I did that for a long time, full disclosure. But she was special in the fact that she was my best friend. She understood what I was doing. She understood my passion for it. And she kept me, as you read in the Under the Black Hat, the things she did to help me survive in a very volatile world, very, very fickle world. You know, a guy from Oklahoma with that Oklahoma accent that's had 3 bouts of facial paralysis that has rendered me without the ability to smile and maybe a little chubby cheeks was not the ideal guy for a national or global television show. Somehow or another, I overcame my own apprehensions, my own lack of confidence, my own anxieties, thanks to her. So she was so special, and I hope the book will tell us, some of us alpha males that we perceive we're alpha males, that it's not all about us. You got to have a support. You got to have a support system. And without her, I don't know what I would have done. To be honest with you, I just don't know what I would have done. So the book is a lot about her. It talks about relationships, how important they are. Somebody's calling me to all these calls are these damn telemarketer guys. So
we're okay.
Just let it ring. I'm not answering a damn thing, no matter what. So now they're done. So they went to the answering machine. They don't want to talk to the answering machine. They want to sell me something. So that was the deal. You know, we have to take an inventory of ourselves. We can't. If we ever look at our lives and where family's not the number one thing, we really need to reevaluate.
I wanted to shift to the AEW and the card tonight, but also the athletes, because one of the things that you said on Grillin' JR, your podcast, is how you're not really caught up in how big a person is when they walk into pro wrestling. It's, can they perform? Do they care about wrestling? Are they good team people? And when I look at the AEW, I see a reflection of myself. I'm 5'5", 130 pounds. So there was no chance of me turning into The Rock or the Texas Rattlesnake. And yet when I watch the product that comes on tonight on TNT at 7 o'clock, I am invigorated because it feels like you are surrounded with people that absolutely love what they're doing and understand the privilege of wrestling on national television.
Makes all the difference in the world. Real simple analogy. Sam Bradford was a 3-star guy coming out of high school. He won the Heisman Trophy. You never know how a talent's going to develop. But the one thing that you can always take inventory of is their passion. Are they emotionally invested in their job? And when you got them on site, are they giving you everything they got? And we got a lot of real hungry young athletes that aren't household words yet, but once you see them, like you've been watching, you'll see that they're very talented. So we have I've compared this to being a broadcaster on an expansion NFL team. There's a few veterans on the team, Jericho, Moxley, Cody, myself, other guys that have been around a while, Tony Schiavone. And then we got so many young guys that are just like tonight. Cody's going to have a match with Luke Perry's son, Jack Perry. Call him Jungle Boy. Things like that. And he's not an oversized guy, but his heart is huge. His passion is enormous, and that's what you look for. You want to invest in the game. And I think if you talk to Lincoln Riley or Mike Gundy or any of these guys, that's one thing you got to make sure you got. You're getting somebody that will make that investment to make themselves better, to be great in the locker room, and to contribute to the team effort. And I think we have that formula there in AEW.
When they approached you to be a part of what they were building, and by they, I'm talking about Cody Rhodes, Brandy Rhodes, and, of course, Tony Khan, what was your first reaction to this new venture? I mean, it feels as if it might be something that you might have been skeptical about with all that you have done in the past.
Well, in 2017, I signed after Jan got killed. McMahon offered me a 2-year contract to hang around, and I took it because I didn't know where else to go. There was no other major opportunities. Even though Vince had taken great care of me financially, I really didn't need to have another job. I was okay. I didn't need extra cash to go to the grocery store. I was okay. And that's another thing, thanks to my wife. Her goal was for she and I to get debt-free, and we did years ago. And that was thanks to her, because, hell, I'd go out and, I'm like everybody else. I got it. I'm going to spend it. I learned to break those habits. But Tony Khan was the key for me coming there. He reached out to my agent, and my agent says, we've got interest in AEW, from AEW. And I had met Tony about 2 years ago. Tony Khan is a major, major fan. He's like that guy that's at every OU game. He's not going to miss a game, home or away. And so that's Tony. So I was with Tony, and I was doing some Japanese wrestling for Mark Cuban's network, and we had a doubleheader weekend in Long Beach, California, and Alex Marvez, the NFL broadcaster for SiriusXM, was an old friend of mine. He brought Tony with him, and that's where I hooked up with Tony and met him for the first time. I was absolutely amazed at his recall. Here's a guy that's 35 years old, that a lot of my work was done before he was born, but he could still quote things I said. He was that big a fan of my work. So I knew that I was welcome there. And then he made the old proverbial offer we couldn't refuse. My contract expired in March of 19, last year. And I had told McMahon, and I'd made my mind up that I wasn't going to restore it. I didn't even want to negotiate. I didn't want to know what his offer was because I didn't want to stay. I felt like that. I felt like Sonny Jurgensen with a pot belly and with a visor and a clipboard standing on the sideline. I wanted to play. I wanted to get in the game because I'm living in an empty house. I lost my best friend. I lost my wife. This is all I've ever known as an adult. It's a pro wrestling business. As crazy as that sound. So I embraced the offer. And Tony made sure, because he wasn't sure I was going to go back to WWE or not, he made sure that he gave me an offer that I could not ignore. And I have not regretted it. It's the best job I've ever had. He's the best boss I've ever had. He's a big part of the Jaguars. He and his dad own the team. The facility we will work in tonight, you'll see on TV, is called Daly's Place. It's a amphitheater adjacent to the Jaguar Stadium. That's where we do a closed set thing. And by the way, everybody that comes on the set's been tested many times. I was tested 4 times for the virus in May, 4 times. And when I go back, I'm going back this weekend to do stuff for work for next week. I'll be tested again. The blood work, the temperature, all the things that we're supposed to do. So it's really a great family atmosphere. And Tony's leadership is what makes our company special, in my opinion.
Talking with Jim Ross, JR, of Under the Black Hat. You can get it wherever books are sold. It is a fantastic read. One of the things that I loved about it was you're telling your story as a part of a couple of matches that I quite frankly forgot about. I remembered the Stone Cold Steve Austin match at the Cox Convention Center at Oklahoma City, but I did not know how you felt going into it. And why did you continue to go through it feeling the way that you felt?
Because, RJ, the coach called the play and I ran it. My dad would tell me, if you're going to take a man some money, do his work. Do what he wants you to do. If you come to an unattainable place that you can't fulfill those obligations, then stop taking his money and do something else. So even though I didn't feel like I was very good at it, I think a cow on ice would probably describe my athletic ability inside the pro wrestling ring. That I just ran the play. I ran the play, simple as that, and did what I was asked to do to the best of my ability. And helping Steve, Stone Cold was a no-brainer. But the thing that got me was that every time OJR went in the ring, this is going to sound very self-serving, but bear with me, the damn minute-by-minute ratings are good. So like any programmer, if something's good and it works, let's do some more of it. So I've had my butt beat by so many great talents: Undertaker, Kurt Angle. I kissed Mr. McMahon's ass in Oklahoma City.
Oh man,
I've done all kinds of crazy stuff. But look, it's part of the showbiz. It's part of the fictional presentation, and that's how that was. That guy's calling me back. He's really wanting this order today, isn't he?
Well,
So that was the deal. I'm a team guy. I'm a team guy. I'm loyal, and that's simple as that. That's again going back to what you asked earlier. How do you do it? Because it's how I was raised, and I keep my commitments. And I keep my word.
Jim, if I had called you 15 weeks ago and said, here's what the next few months of sports entertainment is going to look like, you will be performing in empty buildings, mostly empty buildings, or at your training center, or at an empty football stadium, or whatever. I mean, and it's all so unimaginable before this, and you've had to like plan it and execute it on the fly, and it actually is. It's beyond just watchable. I've gotten used to it, both with your company and the other one. But I mean, just talk about that. I mean, the house, the reaction of the fans, all of that is such a big part of the show, and then now you have that yanked away from you. And so, what has it been like to plan and execute these shows in these unprecedented settings? And then, I mean, if you had to like step out on a limb as to when you think you'll be able to perform again in arenas, even if it's only a half full arena or whatever, I mean, when would you anticipate maybe starting to think about that?
Well, I would have been very intimidated, Bill, if you told me that, and worried. We were challenged to make the best of a bad situation. I remember in 1976, I went to Major League Umpire School, and one of the things I took away from that is the thing they told us every day. As an umpire, you have to remain unemotional in an emotional situation. So that's kind of where we are here. We had to settle down, play the hand that we're dealt. We're lucky we had the facility there in Jacksonville where I spent the entire month of May, and I would spend most of the month of June and July. The other question, I don't know. I hope I'm wrong on this, by the way. I don't see us touring this year. I think we're going to stay in a close setting, close set, if you will, for the foreseeable future. And I hope, simply going by the calendar, that by the time next year at this time rolls around, things will be back to normal to some degree. Now, we're going to know about that sooner than later. I'm still waiting for somebody to tell me. I just sent my money in this week for my OU season tickets. So, I don't know how that's going to work out. Excuse me. I don't know how that's going to work out. So, hopefully, we'll know more. Football's going to tell us a lot. Baseball, NBA, that's all going to tell us a lot about where we are and where we might be able to go in the near future. But I really believe, based on the unknown and certainly right now the unrest of other things, Black Lives Matter, which I fully endorse, I don't know, man. I'm thinking we're going to be in this closed set for the rest of this year, and I hope that I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong. But it's really challenging right now. But I think that we're making the best of the situation. So we're staying unemotional in an emotional situation and making the best that we can And I know it's challenging for the talents. As a broadcaster, you feed off that crowd, the energy. You don't have that right now. So you got to create your own energy. So that means you got to have passion for what you're doing. And I'm a monitor guy. I don't broadcast based on what I see peripherally. I watch the monitor, because what you're seeing at home is what I'm seeing on my monitor. And for me to do my job correctly, I got to describe to you what you're seeing, not what you're not seeing.
JR, I got to ask you before we let you go about your outlook for the 2020 season for the Sooners. 12-2, it feels like it's within reach, but I don't know. I mean, we've had 3 straight seasons of 12-2. Do you see the same?
Well, obviously, I hope so. I'd like to see us not lose a game and finally win the national title again. I think this team has a tremendous upside. I love the coaching staff. They communicate so well with their players. Their contemporary thinking. Lincoln Riley, I believe, is the best college football coach in the country. I hope that we can keep him for a long, long time. He's a friend of mine. He's a good man. But this team, to me, is not unlike any other football team. They're going to go about as far as their quarterback.
Dadgummit.
Oh, he was just getting at it, too.
What he's about to say is exactly right, too.
As good as the quarterback can be, I want to give him another year. I want to give him another year before I put all this on him. That's Jim Ross. JR is what he asked me to call him. The game. The book is called Under the Black Hat, My Life in the WWE and Beyond. It is outstanding. Jim Ross is the voice of wrestling for me. I love him dearly. I appreciate him taking the time to do this and ignoring the telemarketers while he gave us a half hour of his time. Come back. We will talk some more about pro wrestling, AEW, and tell some Jim Ross stories that we learned in his book. You're listening to the RJ Young Show on your home for sports, the sports animal.